listening to the Climate Alarm Clock podcast. Still to come this week, we find out what greenwashing is from Tom Spencer, but now we're continuing our feature where we chat to different environmental organisations and find out about the work they do and how you can get involved. This week, we find out about the work of An Taisce from Dr Elaine McGoff, and I started off by asking her who An Taisce are and what exactly they do.
Yeah, well, what a lot of people don't realise is An Taisce is a charity. We're not a state organisation. So that's the first thing to point out. We were founded in 1948 and we're one of Ireland's oldest environmental charities. And we're divided into two main branches. And you'll hear about our work in two very distinct areas. The education unit are the first branch. And it's them that deal with things like clean coasts and green schools. They're the ones that a lot of your listeners might know. They came into their schools during their school days and talked to them. And then there's the advocacy unit, and I work for the advocacy unit. And we are, I guess, maybe sometimes seen as the more controversial side because we are the ones that would initiate court action and involve ourselves in planning. The education unit does get government funding for its programs. It's like ring-fenced. But the advocacy unit depends almost entirely on donations and people becoming members to get our work done. So An Taisce are what is called a statutory consultee or a prescribed body under the planning regs, which means that essentially if there's a development that's happening that might be ecologically problematic, then the councils have to send it to us and say, what do you think? Give us your opinion. Now it's great to be asked for our opinion. It doesn't mean they necessarily listen to us, but we do get to input at an early stage, and we're the only environmental NGO with that status. So it's really beneficial to have it.
Yeah, so I knew that you weren't a government body, but at the same time you are it's almost legislated for that you were involved in this process, but with no funding source to do that. Is that?
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. Like we comment on hundreds of planning applications a year, and on my side, I'd be dealing with forestry licensing as well and aquaculture licensing. So we are just absolutely inundated, and we very much would act as a watchdog. And often councils will specifically ask us our opinion because they want our input. So I feel like we play a really valuable part in the planning process. Although we don't get funding for it, we do take it really seriously. Like we are a very professional outfit. Anything we say in our planning submissions is evidence-based, science-based, legally based. So we can't just go off on tangents and say we don't like that. I think a lot of our detractors would say, it's the world according to An Taisce. They just take a notion and this is how they want the world to look. But that's actually not the case at all. What we do is point out to the government that they're ignoring the things that they've already signed up to. So a lot of my work would be looking at the legal side of environmental assessments and like picking holes in it and saying, you've said that there's not going to be an issue, but look here, you said you don't have the data to make those conclusions. So it's a certain amount of legal nitpicking. Sounds like a trivial way to put it, but really just doing a very solid review on any of the environmental assessments that are sent to us and raising concerns. And then there's like broader concerns, like, when we get applications for, say, expanding meat factories or like the cheese plant where they want to make cheese, then we would maybe bring in broader issues like, can in terms of our environmental and climate obligations, do they fit within that? It's harder to argue that because obviously, the legal tools aren't fully in place yet, but we would still raise those issues in addition to the very hard legal issues.
I suppose there's part of me that thinks it would be great if we didn't have a need for An Taisce.
I know, that's it. Like, I mean, our ideal outcome is that there would be no need for us and for other organizations. Obviously, I don't want to do myself out of a job, but like in an ideal world, you wouldn't need us.
When you mentioned there, for example, about just pointing out to the government stuff that they've already committed to, that Darragh wind farm that's just been shut down, is that essentially what happened there, that there was stuff that wasn't done in the development of that process that they should have done?
Exactly. They never did an environmental impact assessment, but they went ahead and put it up anyway. And there was huge public opposition. And because it didn't go through the process, there wasn't kind of rigorous oversight. And I mean, what resulted was a landslide and destruction of houses and the local environment. And like, I don't know how many years we are later. I think it's 17 years and 15 million worth of fines down the drain. And now the ESB have said they're going to dismantle it and take it down. But it's, what's happening, those wind turbines, now what's going to happen to them? Is that just waste? And can they undo the damage that they already did? It's just a disaster from beginning to end. And it's because there wasn't sufficient environmental oversight.
To me, that's sort of a good way of understanding what An Taisce does. It's trying to prevent stuff like that from happening.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's just one part of our work. It's a very big part of our work. But then there's also the advocacy side where I don't know, I go to hundreds of meetings every year. I'll meet ministers, I'll meet TDs, officials, the MPWS, the EPA, the OPW, and we're just constantly this is a work area that's in common with almost all of the bigger environmental NGOs in Ireland. We just go into these meetings and we just repeat ourselves and repeat ourselves and repeat ourselves. And it's really difficult to gauge success in the advocacy area because it's very slow, it's incremental, it might take years. But nonetheless, we have to, that's our job, that we just have to constantly put our head above the parapet and say, no, this is what needs to happen. This is what needs to happen. And media is obviously another big, big part of that, going on radio shows and saying the same thing and taking a certain amount of abuse, to be honest. The climate and biodiversity crisis are absolutely fundamental. They're fundamental areas of our work. And there's different I work really closely with other organizations like the Irish Wildlife Trust and Birdwatch and the Sustainable Water Network. We have a really good collective of people that work well collaboratively. But what An Taisce brings to the table is that we're quite a generalist. We work across a lot of areas and a lot of pressures. So we work, obviously the planning space we'd be working on wind farms and flooding and water quality and biodiversity. We cover a whole range, and we bring in a lot of experts. We have amazing in-house expertise. We have An Taisce have a climate committee, and we have some of the leading climate experts on that committee. So I can draw on them when I need help looking at the really complex climate models. I can call those up and say, can you please explain it to me? Because I'm not a climate scientist, and climate science is incredibly complex. So they can kind of break it down for me. And it's a massive resource that An Taisce have that other NGOs wouldn't necessarily have. So the legal angle is one of our strongest assets in An Taisce. Not many other environmental NGOs take such a legalistic approach, and it can seem really dry. It's hard to sell to the public because it's not as exciting as protecting seagrass beds or reintroducing wolves. We talk about the law and planning, and people just doze off because it doesn't sound like it's that important. But if you look around the world, climate litigation, in the climate space in particular, climate litigation is changing the face of the battle. The Urgenda case where the Dutch Urgenda case where they won, and that's going to massively change the outlook there. There's other climate cases across the world happening now, and it's really forcing governments' hands to actually take action. So while planning might seem boring, it really is, and it's one of our most powerful tools. And it's worth your listeners knowing as well that there's in the background, there's a growing push from the government to shut down those avenues to get access to justice. They're trying to shut down who can take a judicial review and make it more expensive, because An Taisce are really lucky. We have some really incredible lawyers who work with us on what's called a no-fault, no-fee basis. That means that if we lose a case, they don't get paid. But if we win the case, they do get paid. But what the government are trying to suggest is that they put a cap on how much those lawyers could get. And from memory, if my memory serves me right, it's somewhere, I think it's in the region of maybe 20 or 30,000 euro, which sounds like a lot, but legal fees in Ireland are incredibly expensive. And like the Supreme Court ruling that we just, all of that process, like that, I don't know the exact figure, but I would estimate that might have been in the region of like 150 to 200,000 euros worth of legal fees. So lawyers need to pay their bills. They need to pay their rent. So if their potential payment is going to be capped at such a low number, they're going to be far less willing to engage with environmental organizations like An Taisce to take these legal challenges. So, I mean, when your listeners they'll see it keeps popping up in the news about serial objectors and planning reform. But actually what that means is shutting out the public voice. It's really problematic because, as I said, it's very hard for us to be heard. And although the courts are a last resort, they are where we have teeth. And it's one of the places where we can get action, because the playing field is much more balanced, because we are out lobbied on all sides, like the industry, the agri-industry, the oil industry, all of the fishing industry. They're all incredibly powerful and they're very good at lobbying, and we just cannot compete with that. And the courts are one of the great levelers.
It's such important work that you do. So if our listeners want to get involved or support your work, what can they do?
Yeah, by becoming a member of An Taisce, it's hugely helpful. We have student membership and on-wage membership that costs a tenner for the year, or regular membership costs €60. And one-off or regular donations are also really helpful. And having members serves a dual purpose. I have an absolutely vested interest because membership fees pay my wages. So I would like to keep doing the work that I do. But beyond that, it also gives us a mandate for the work that we do. So to give you an example, when we were in the midst of taking the appeal against the cheese factory down in Kilkenny, the Taoiseach spoke out and said that we shouldn't take the appeal, and we had politicians saying we should be defunded. We were called treasonous. It was we've never seen the like before. The pushback, the high level political pushback, was incredible. And I did a drive time interview on RTE, and it was just amazing. Within minutes of finishing the interview, the membership just started to go up and up and up. Donations started flooding in. And it was really a very big sign to our detractors that we speak for the people, that we aren't just this fringe element. We aren't just this Dublin body. And lots of people took to Twitter and to other social media saying, An Taisce speak for us. I support An Taisce. And it was, even on a personal level, it was massively heartening, because it can be really exhausting and intimidating to face that kind of pushback constantly, to constantly be the unpopular person in the room. So it gives me, in my work, it really lifts me up when I know that there is a huge amount of people behind me saying, yes, you speak for me. We believe in the work you're doing. So the membership is both paying my wage and really helping me do my job. And yeah, they're the biggest things. And also, any of your members that are on any of your listeners that are on social media, it's great to have people being vocal about our work on Twitter, and again, just vocally supporting us.
That was Dr. Elaine McGoff of An Taisce, and I really like that concept of when you buy a membership, you're helping an organisation to do their work, and then they are also advocating on your behalf. And it's a great reason to get involved in any of the organisations that you have heard about on this season of the Climate Alarm Clock. Coming up next on this week's Climate Alarm Clock, we talk to Tom Spencer about greenwashing.